Hello and welcome again to the Crowing Cockerel podcast. I'm Graham. I'm here with Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Tom.
Hello, chaps.
Another busy week in the Tottenham world. A couple of videos that we need to discuss. And I think the first one we've really got to get into is the video with Levy and Vinai on the beginning of the week. A bit of a surprise, I think, all round. We don't normally hear a lot from Daniel Levy. A couple of surprising things in there. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, first of all, anytime Levy sticks his head above the parapet, it's always an interesting watch. There's a lot of Levy haters out there. I think with regards to how he's run the club, I don't think many people can complain about how he's moved us forward as a business entity. But of course, there's a lot of noise around what he does with us with regards to being a football club that can challenge. And as soon as you stick him in front of a camera, you tend to see that straight-laced businessman side of him eke out of him, even when he's trying to do the touchy-feely football fan bit. I actually thought this was probably one of his better efforts. And I think one of those reasons was because of how well Vinai came across. Obviously, ex-Arsenal, let's just gloss over that. But I thought there seemed to be genuine respect between the two. And the amount of times that Vinai also mentioned that we're singing from the same hymn sheet, but if we disagree, we'll disagree. And I thought, actually, that seemed to put Levy in a really good light. Vinai made Levy look a little more human. I felt like it was as a good as introduction to Vinai as it was. I felt like it was probably one of the better showings for Levy in one of these promos.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I agree with what you've said, and I can't decide whether to take it at face value or to be a little more cynical about it, because you're right, Vinai came across great, and I just felt like there was a definite effort on his part to make Levy seem a little more personable. You know, they're clearly, like you say, they've got a lot of mutual business respect for each other. They're clearly friends as well. And yeah, part of me was just thinking whilst I was watching it, is he making too much effort? In particular, he was saying how he doesn't know how he's done it for so long and how it hurts him so much when we're not winning. And it was so good to see us win because of what it meant to Daniel Levy and everything like that. So yes, I think it's probably right to take it at face value, but I can certainly see, as you say, those that don't like Levy particularly would take a bit more of a cynical view, as it was a bit of an ego massage or a personality massage by the two of them to try and get everyone a bit more on board with the both of them.
He came from Arsenal, where he apparently was brilliant at sort of building the togetherness of the club. You know, did a lot from a PR point of view, fan engagement point of view, and you can see why Levy wanted him in, considering the controversies over the last, few weeks or months. He's clearly very good in front of a camera. What really showed for me was that Daniel Levy is really quite uncomfortable. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. There seemed to be a huge difference in personality between the two. And as Tom said, Daniel is very process driven, an absolute workaholic. I think that's been said a number of times before. I don't think he's the sort of guy that can get in front of a room of people and really bring them along on a journey. So like you, Mark, I think you've got to take everything said with a pinch of salt, and it was very PR-y. And I think we're not aiming on this podcast to be Levy out or Levy in. We're more relaxed than that. We're hopefully a different kind of podcast. So we don't want to get into that. But there was a couple of real standout moments, wasn't there? The first one I think that we've really got to delve into is red wine. Why did that come up? Why did that come up? Why was that what they felt was the personality illustration? I mean, even Vinai looked uncomfortable when he brought it up, and I imagine that was like the 15th take. So, it was quite a funny moment, and it was nice to see. And again, Vinai was like, yeah, and Daniel knows an awful lot about red wine. And then there was a sort of tumbleweed split second where it was like, okay, anyway, moving on. And of course, it's just created another debate around never red. We should never mention red wine. I personally don't drink red wine when Spurs are playing, although I quite like a glass of red wine. I'm a middle-aged superstitious child.
I think it's going to be a good thing for the club just in terms of that engagement. Like you said, he was really well thought of at Arsenal. I was looking at a couple of the reports about them, and they seem genuinely gutted to see him leave. I'm sure they're even more genuinely gutted now they've seen where he's gone. And so that's definitely a bit of a coup for the club. I think if Vinai is now going to be that public face of the business, if you like, replacing Levy, I think that's going to be a really good thing. He already mentioned in the interview that his priority was to get in front of the supporters trust and the various fans forums that there are and be able to kind of engage at that level. And I think just from that interview, like I said, he came across really well. And if that is going to be the person that we now see as that public voice of the club, that can only be a good thing because, as you say, every time Levy attempts to do it, we even saw it after the Europa League, didn't we, where he got up on stage and there was that awkward little speech that he gave, and it just doesn't work. And you've got to know your strengths. And I think, to be fair, he does know his strengths, and that's why he doesn't appear in front of the camera and everything like that, because he just knows that that's not what he does well. It's clearly something that Vinai appears to be far more comfortable doing, and I think that will be to Spurs' benefit going forward.
The other thing is Vinai is definitely way more media savvy than Levy is. And actually, just think about deciding to make that move. That takes some serious cojones to say, well, I'm going to move between these two rival clubs. I've seen in the press how well thought he was. I've seen that he's considered to be, as Graham was saying, sort of really good conduit between the fans and the business. He's obviously very sort of comfortable being that front face, but he's also got a fair set of stones to sort of move between the mortal enemy and ourselves. We can be sort of relatively confident that we've got somebody who knows what they're doing. As much as it pains us to say, Arsenal haven't done too badly over the last few years. I mean, they've not won anything, obviously, but they've been competing, and we'd be daft to ignore that. He's got some quality, that fella, and I'm interested to see what he does.
The other thing that really came out of it, so that the other big thing that was a bit of a surprise, I think, to a lot of people, especially Cuti Romero, was that Daniel Levy effectively said he wants to win the lot. Absolutely, right down the camera. We don't just want to win the Europa League. It's terribly difficult for him, he said, to sack Ange. But at the end of the day, we don't just want to win the Europa League. We want to win the Premier League. We want to win the Champions League. We want to win everything. Now, there's a possibility that they were on their third bottle of Malbec when he said that, and he regrets it terribly. But he seemed really quite serious about it. And I think a lot of us were probably watching that and thinking, great. But then after a bit of reflection, but you could want to win anything. What are you going to do to actually make that happen?
Yeah, you would hope that that's always been the case, right? You would hope that it's always been the case that we've wanted to win everything. So it's like you say, words are words, and that's all well and good.
What's going to be different?
Exactly. What is going to change? But it was interesting, though. He was talking about all of the additional revenue with all of the concerts that are going on over the summer and everything else, the F1 and the NFL and all this stuff. And the one quote that stuck out for me is that he said, everything is about the team. And then he repeated it, everything. And it was just that, it was a really pointed statement, I think, because I think he's often accused that is the accusation, isn't it? That he's built the stadium, he's built the infrastructure, we've got this magnificent training ground, we've got everything that goes on in and around the stadium, bringing all of this revenue in, but that isn't being funneled into the team and we're not seeing the direct benefits of all that happening.
It's always been great things going on to build for a future, but the problem is there's clubs now that don't need to build for the future and are getting further and further away. So obviously they're not going to sit in this interview and say, we are going to spend £500 million this summer. I mean, that's obviously not going to happen anyway, but there's now got to be something to back that up. And there's still not a lot of movement in the transfer window, but you'd expect that.
But again, I think it's this thing that for me, I think supporters are too easy to simplify that whole thing about we should be spending 200 million, we should be spending 300 million. To me, it's not about the money. It's about the quality of the signings that we're making. There's plenty of teams in the Premier League that are bringing players in for 30 million, 40 million, and they're quality signing.
Brighton.
Yeah, Brentford. There seems to be this real thing where we want Spurs to spend 100 million. We want, like Arsenal went out and signed Declan Rice. Liverpool have gone and signed. That's not going to happen. We are not in that position where we are going to pay 100 million for an absolute top, because they're not going to come to Spurs. We've got to be realistic about that. So for me, it's not really about the amount of money that we've spent over the past 5 years, because we've spent money, but up until very recently, the recruitment has been awful. And that, to me, is the issue. And that, I think, has already changed, and hopefully will continue to trend upwards on that.
Levy obviously has had his hand on a lot of how we've acted in the recruitment side of things. You felt his hand on a lot of those decisions over the years. I got the impression that Vinai was here to take some of that burden off Levy. That not only is he going to be the front face,
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that is the case, because it does feel of late, I think we were saying before in previous episodes, where there has been a bit of an upward trend with some of the players we bought recently. Langer, Paratici, these sort of connections and approaches to that sort of youth recruitment has been really good. Bergval's been absolutely standout, for example. But what you're saying around us not going out and buying a player for 100 million, it's kind of what we need. If we're going to go to the next level. So, for example, you mentioned Arsenal. They bought Declan Rice for 100 million, and they've just spent the last 2-3 seasons competing at the very top of the Premier League, beating Real Madrid in the Champions League. If you do want to take that next step, you can invest all you like in youth, but you have to get very lucky to then actually see a progression. So as a club, we know we've got money in the bank. We know that there's probably things we can do to move some players on, to free up some space, to offer some wages to some top talent. So I don't disagree that you have to go out and spend 200, 300, 400 million. But I think if Levy and Vinai are serious about the stuff they were saying in that interview, taking us to the next level, I think does mean you have to go out and consider making one of those big marquee signings. Because I tell you what, you do, and those sort of signings attract other signings. Those sort of signings attract revenue. I would hope that we start seeing Tottenham being linked to those sort of players.
Yeah, and the last North London team to compete for a couple of seasons at the top and to beat Real Madrid in the Champions League was Spurs, but we had £100 million player already in our squad. We already had Harry Kane. So we already had the world-class player. Now, the difference now is, to take us to the next level, we've got to find that world-class player. Now, I do agree with both your points. I don't think you'd go out and spend £100 million because that's the thing you have to do. What you do have to do is buy quality for the positions that you actually need to improve in. With Kulusevski being injured potentially for quite a long time this season, and Maddison not exactly having the best track record of completing games and staying injury free, then going out and buying a midfielder attacker that can play that number 10 role, if Frank is going to play like that, but to buy quality that and possibly Premiership proven quality. So rumours around Eze haven't gone away. £68 million buyout clause.
And I was hearing over the last few days, actually, that Palace aren't necessarily going to enforce that full amount of the buyout clause.
Yeah,
as well.
Do it over a period of time. Yeah, I think you can sit in an interview room and you can say we want to win everything, but if you're going to say that, what you now need to do this summer is go, right, it's no good Thomas Frank having the same gaps in the same squad. That's just not going to work. What we now need to do is put real quality in there as well, because we've got the African Cup of Nations in January. So Sarr, Basuma potentially are going to be involved in that. That's, again, leaving Bentancur, Bergval is grey ready. It's too weak, that midfield. Doesn't matter who you want to be. Now, Thomas Frank might be a great coach, but you're not going to be competing to win things unless you've got real quality players.
But I also think, again, just to come back to my point about being realistic, is that These things are not going to happen in a season. We're not going to be able to fill every gap. We're not going to be able to strengthen. Ideally, obviously, you'd want to strengthen the squad as well, because we've said that the first team, first choice, first team is going to get you a lot of the way there. It's just it all falls down when you've then got to start bringing in the backup. So you need to strengthen that squad as well. But yeah, to your point, we need to prioritise, I think, on 2 or 3 key positions. And yeah, if we were able to make a statement signing, and I think Eze is one of those, I think he would qualify as a statement sign-in. It's a sign of intent, isn't it? It's definitely a sign of intent and a sign of a change in tide on what we're looking to do if we're going to go out and stick 70 million odd on a player to fill a gap. But yeah, I don't know. I worry when I hear all these fans saying, "Oh, we need to spend this, we need to spend that." It's because we've spent money before, and traditionally we are awful at spending big money. I mean,
we're nearly as bad as Man United at spending big.
Chelsea
record signings tend to be a bit of a disaster. So if you look at the record signings of a lot of clubs, they tend to be not their best signings by any stretch. But I think if you could look at Liverpool, you could look at Arsenal, and at the right time they spent the right amount of money on the right player.
And that's all I'm saying. That for a marquee signing in the right position where we need it, yet Prem proven or Champions League proven. Because I'd say this as well: if we're going to do it now. Do it this summer. Don't wait another summer. I know you might saying you don't say we don't have to do it all in one season. You're right, but this season we're in the Champions League.
Well, and our stock is high. Obviously, we've just won a trophy, so the mood around the club is good, and the fans are on side, and so yeah, I completely agree that at the moment we're in a good space to be able to kind of bring players in from that perspective as well.
So the other thing that we brought up in the previous episode was how long Thomas Frank was on holiday. And obviously, out of the thousands of listeners we have across all the platforms, he must have been one, because he ran back from holiday almost the day after.
He's back.
And announced himself. And yeah, and it was brilliant because he did a fantastic interview again. Really, really impressed with the way he came across. Really impressed with what he said about not taking a risk is a risk. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good soundbite. Good soundbite, wasn't that?
It's literally, it's the Danish translation of to dare is to do.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And the way he provided a bit of a tribute to Ange as well by saying he's built the foundations. Now we go and build on those foundations. What goes next is built on what came before and all that kind of thing. You can see why people really engage with him and want to get on board with him. Again, it feels like he's a guy that's going to be all about the team, the squads, everybody together, rather than Thomas Frank. And I think that is what works for Spurs, not I'm the personality.
Yeah, I think one of the things that came across as well is that just the sense of him realising just how big a club we are. He talked about seeing the celebrations and the sights on the streets outside the stadium and everything. And I think he, as we've said before, the timing of it happening just after we've won something, I think it really just gives a really good sort of image of the club in terms of this is what it's all about. This is why we say we're a big club, because when we do win something, you really notice how big we are. We're a global team, a global brand. And I think if he hadn't realised that before, he's definitely realised that now.
Yeah.
And he is now at a new level. And I think he definitely realises that.
Yeah. And the other thing I like about him is that I reckon I could probably take him at table tennis.
He was awful, wasn't he?
Not great.
Again, who does the editing on these videos? I mean, the tumbleweed with Levy, and then let's play table tennis. I'm a bit worried he didn't have the gumption to go, no, I'm terrible at table tennis. I don't want to be filmed playing table tennis.
I think one of the things we were talking about, wondering how we're going to play, but what I enjoyed hearing was the fact that he said he wants to play an aggressive, front-footed football, and he really puts a lot of emphasis on what happens in that final third, in chance creation and getting the balls into the box. So I think, like you say, he's definitely going to be looking to use the foundation that Ange has provided and take that on a step further. He's certainly not going to be holding back and defensive. He's going to look to try and take advantage of all of the attacking-minded players that we've got. And of course, we score goals. Like even last season, it was a terrible season, but we scored so many goals still. So it's definitely good to hear that he seems like he's going to be somebody who follows in our traditions of attacking football and really looking to make the most out of the players that we've got in that final third.
What I found really interesting is the similarity that there was between what he said about he's happy with players losing the ball by, if they're taking a risk in the attacking play, as long as they work hard. And Ange Postecoglou, very, very similar when he came in. He was I don't care whether you lose the ball. What I care about is you trying to play the way that I want you to play. Now, Thomas Frank was like, what I care about is hard work. You have to work hard. If you lose the ball, you lose the ball. But you have to work hard, and that is the non-negotiable. And I think as fans, there's nothing we want to see more than players just working their socks off. And I do think that's why there wasn't, with Ange, the meltdowns in the stadium, is because you could see the players still trying, even when they were losing so many games. You couldn't fault the effort for the majority of those games. I'm quite looking forward to seeing what we're going to look like under Frank.
So, of course, it is that time of the year over the summer where the fixtures have come out. It's always an exciting time to have a look and see who we got first up. Is it going to be a nice, easy or a tricky start for Thomas Frank? And looking at the fixtures, I actually think it's been pretty kind for us this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing I wanted first game of the season, and that was a home game on a Saturday. That's what I wanted. Now, to get Burnley at home, you can't ask for more than that, can you? A 3 o'clock kickoff at the moment on the Saturday against Burnley. Nothing is guaranteed. You can't expect to win every game without turning up and playing properly. But to get a promoted team at home, first game, and the expectation would be is that Burnley aren't going to be fantastic in the Premier League, are they? So I think it's really, really exciting as a first start of the season. I think it's a really good opportunity to get 3 points on the board. And the best thing is then, of course, we've got a guaranteed 3 points the next game because we're away at Man City.
It's what I was just about to say. Yeah, exactly. It's basically a 6 point guaranteed start for us.
But yeah, you look at those first few fixtures and okay, the first 2 away games can be a little bit tricky. It's always nice to beat West Ham. It's a bit early in the season for me. I like me proper derbies really in the messy bit of the season. But
well, talking about the messy bit of the season, I mean, the other side of the coin with having a fairly gentle start, and we've also got a fairly gentle end of the season, is that there are 2 periods in particular that are brutal. November is going to be an interesting one. November, we have Chelsea at home, Champions League, Manchester United at home, Arsenal away, Champions League. That is going to be an interesting run of games.
And just before that, we've got Villa at home and Everton away. So Everton at their new ground.
Yeah.
And obviously Villa you'd expect to be challenging again up the top. Fulham at home and then Newcastle away. So there's no break there at all, is there?
Yeah, and the other period to look out for is end of January and then the whole of February. So the end of January, you have the final Champions League match day. We then have our guaranteed 3 points at home to Manchester City. If we're still in it, we've got the second leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final. Then it's Man United away, Newcastle at home, FA Cup 4th round, Champions League playoff first leg, Arsenal at home, Champions League playoff second leg. Bosh.
Now that is brutal.
That is meaty, isn't it?
I agree that the run-in looks okay. If you're thinking about, again, ending the season at home, always a plus. We do have Chelsea away before that, but then before that it's Leeds, Villa and Wolves. So it's games that you think that there's points to pick up on there. Ideally we shouldn't be on a run of 6, 7, 8 defeats in a row by that stage. Fingers crossed. But yeah, to top and tail the season with home games, I think, like I say, that's sort of, if there's something to play for on that final day, and if you want to start the season with some sort of momentum with regards to these fixtures, yeah, that's as much as you can ask for.
I think the only thing that we need to discuss now is just to say a very happy 90th birthday to an absolute Spurs managerial legend, that is Keith Burkinshaw.
Absolutely. I think we do need to place a bit of tribute here, because the circumstances around him winning the UEFA Cup, as it was then, now the Europa League, and then leaving the club straight after, is very similar to what's happened recently. The guy rebuilt the team after relegation, won 2 FA Cups, made us one of the biggest teams in the country in the early 80s. So I think a lot of people of a certain age will look back at that period with Ardiles, Villa, Hoddle, Perriman, Graham Roberts, all these fantastic players.
I think if you think about us, Spurs fans of our age, the reason we probably support Spurs is because of the foundations he built to bring Spurs back up again. So they were a team that were front and center, and let's face it, have stayed in the upper echelons of the English league. I think he probably deserves a lot more credit. You hear a lot of other football fans know previous Liverpool managers and previous Man United managers, but actually I think there's a lot to be said for managers like this that have come in and transformed the club and deserve a lot of credit. So yeah, many happy returns.
Yeah, and of course, going back to something we talked about earlier about statement signings, well, of course, he signed 2 World Cup winning 1978 Argentinian midfielders that absolutely transformed the club. So yeah, maybe we do need £100 million spent on a statement signing after all. Happy birthday, Keith Burkinshaw.